Good morning, y'all. Today we're taking a sharp turn south, both geographically and theologically, as we descend into the fiery pits of Dante's Inferno. We're about to get hotter than a jalapeno in a heat wave. Get ready for the most famous guided tour of hell ever written. The Divine Comedy ain't just any old book. It's one of the absolute crown jewels of world literature, and its author, Dante, wasn't just any old poet. He was a literary genius who fundamentally changed how folks thought about poetry, religion, politics, and language itself. Now, a little context is going to help us understand the masterpiece. Dante was born in Florence, Italy, around 1265, so we've jumped forward about 500 years from Beowulf. The Italy of Dante's time wasn't the unified country we know today. It was split into rival city-states that were constantly mixing it up. Florence was one of the most powerful at the time. Dante got himself tangled up in these politics. He was part of the Guelphs, who generally supported the Pope, while the Ghibellines backed the Holy Roman Emperor. But like any good political drama, things got a little complicated. The Guelphs split into white Guelphs and black Guelphs, and poor Dante ended up on the losing side when the black Guelphs took control of Florence in 1301. The poet was sentenced to exile, which is painful for an Italian. He was told he'd be executed if he ever stepped foot in Florence again. And guess what? He never did go home. He spent the rest of his life nursing a broken heart for his city and writing some of the most beautiful poetry the world has ever seen. It was during his exile that Dante composed the Divine Comedy. Now, don't let the name fool you. It ain't a laugh, not like a night at the comedy club in medieval times. A comedy was simply a story that started in a bad place and ended up in a good one. And this one follows that pattern. So there's our boy Dante, wandering around in the spooky forest when who should appear but the ghost of Virgil. In Dante's Inferno, Virgil represents human reason and classical wisdom. He tells Dante that he's been sent by Bernice, the love of Dante's life, who died young, to guide him on a journey through hell, then purgatory, and finally Beatrice herself will guide him through paradise. Now, what makes Dante's Inferno so remarkable is how carefully structured it is. It ain't just a random collection of torment. It's an intricately designed moral universe where the punishment fits the crime in the most poetic way possible. It's the divine justice with a flair for the dramatic. Dante's hell is shaped like a funnel, with 4 circles, each dedicated to a different category of sin, getting worse as you go deeper. At the very bottom is Satan himself, frozen in ice, which isn't what y'all might expect, is it? The first circle is limbo, where virtuous non-Christians and unbaptized babies hang out. It's not too terrible, just a bit sad and gloomy. Here Dante meets the great classical poets and philosophers like Homer and Aristotle, who can't enter heaven because they weren't Christian, but they didn't do anything bad enough to deserve punishment. As we descend, we find the circles devoted to sins of incontinence, those who couldn't control their appetites. The lustful are blown about by eternal winds, just as they were blown about by their passions in life. The gluttons are in filthy slush, pelted with icy rain, and the hoarders and the spendthrifts push heavy weights against each other, forever fighting over material goods. In the lower circles, we find the more serious sins: violence, fraud, treachery. And let me tell you, Dante got mighty creative with these punishments. Flatterers are immersed in human excrement. Hypocrites wear heavy lead cloaks that were golden on the outside. Diviners have their heads twisted backwards, so if they were trying to see the future, now all they can see is behind them. One of the most famous scenes comes in Canto 5, where Dante meets the lovers Paolo and Francesca, swirling together in the circle of hell. Their story moved him so much that he actually faints from compassion. This tells us something important about our journey through hell. It ain't just about gawking at sinners getting their just desserts. It's about Dante learning to understand sin, to feel appropriate pity sometimes, but also to recognize divine justice. Now, what makes the Inferno so rich and fascinating is how Dante populates his hell with real historical figures, mythological characters, and even people he knew personally in Florence. It's like the ultimate revenge fantasy, putting your political enemies and that neighbor that never returned your casserole dish in your vision of hell. but it also is a profound meditation on justice, free will, and the consequences of our choices. Another thing that makes the Inferno so special is how it blends Christian theology with classical literature. Dante's hell is definitely Christian in its moral framework, but Dante shows us monsters like Cerberus and the Minotaur alongside Christian concepts of sin and punishment. It's a perfect example of how medieval European culture was trying to reconcile its Christian faith with its classical inheritance. The Inferno also gives us a window into medieval political thought. Dante reserves special places in hell for corrupt popes and political leaders. In fact, some of the most scathing criticism in the poem is directed at the corruption of the church, which Dante saw as abandoning the spiritual mission for worldly power and wealth. That's pretty bold talk for a devoted Catholic in the 14th century. The poetry itself is a technical marvel, written in a form called terza rima, 3-line stanzas where the end rhymes follows an ABA, BCB, CDC pattern. It's like a braid of sound that pulls you forward through the narrative, and Dante wrote it in Italian rather than Latin, which was revolutionary. He believed in the power and beauty of the vernacular, which is the everyday language. In many ways, Dante helped create the modern Italian language, just like Shakespeare would later shape English. Now I want y'all to really think about what Dante's doing here. He's created this elaborate allegory that works on multiple levels. It's a personal story of spiritual crisis and redemption. It's a political commentary on his times. It's a comprehensive moral philosophy, and it's a showcase for poetic virtuosity. Talk about multitasking. As you read the selection from the Inferno, I want you to pay special attention to Dante's development as a character. In the beginning, he's overly compassionate towards sinners, even fainting at some of their stories. By the end, he learned to align his will with the divine justice, even if it seems harsh to human eyes. This moral education is what the journey is all about. The Inferno has influenced literature, art, music, and popular culture right up to the present day, from the Renaissance paintings to video games, from T.S. Eliot's poetry to movies about the afterlife. Dante's vision of hell has seeped into our collective imagination. All right, my literary travelers, let's embark on this journey through the circles of hell. And remember what my grandmama always said, sometimes you gotta go through a little darkness to appreciate the light. That is exactly what Dante's journey is all about.